Hi everyone, and welcome back to another DreamSpace Home Space series with our MakeCode Arcade webinar. So I'm super excited to get started today because today we are leveling up. Okay, so last week we built out a pretty cool game, if I do say so myself, and this week now we're actually building upon it. So I am just going to jump out of here and let's get started. Now, remember to make sure you go to your arcade.makecode.com web browser, and when you go to your home button, your game should still be there, or else you can just re-upload your game. So this is where we finished off last week, where when we overlapped with the chickens, the chicken bones, the flies came at us, but if we jumped over the flies, we were able to get a point. We also inserted our love hearts, which gave us a life. And if I overlap with this chicken bone here, if the fly gets me, I lose a point. So the whole point of the game is to get to the end without losing all your lives and to try get the high score. So I think my high score last time was 4. So I'm hoping today that we can actually build upon that, okay? Now, one thing that I would say that we are going to need to do is we're actually going to have to start creating functions. Because if we look at our code here, it's actually quite full, right? So there's a lot going on. And remember, we talked about functions before in our Nemo game, and we talked about how we use them to condense our code and to organize our code. So I think it's a really good idea if we're going to start introducing the idea of levels to start using some functions. So what we can do now is we can go into advanced, because functions are actually a very, very advanced feature, okay? They're used across every single coding platform, okay? So go into functions and let's make a function. And I'm going to call this start level, okay? And then you just press done and it pops up here. But what I like to do is I like to just drag it over here so I can see it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to say if our current level is equal to 1, I want my level to look like this. Or else my current level is going to be equal to 2 and I want it to look like this. So what we need to do is we need to actually create a variable for our levels. Because if you think about it, right, if you play a video game, you're not going to be on the same level forever. So if I think about the video games that I play, like Crash Bandicoot, I know that I'm constantly leveling up. So I'm constantly changing level. And in coding, when something is able to change all the time, we call it a variable. So let's go into variables and let's make a variable. And I'm going to call this current level and press OK. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure at the very, very start of our game, our current level is 1, because you usually start on level 1. Okay, so let's take out set current level 2 and let's put it in our on start block. And I'm going to set my current level to 1. Okay. Now, what I want to do over here is I want to say that if my current level is 1, then I want you to look like this. So I'm going to have to bring out an if statement. You've probably heard me say if a few times there when I was explaining that. So that kind of automatically makes me think a conditional. So I'm going to bring this out. And I said if current level equal to 1, so I'm going to need an equals to comparator. So I'm going to need this. And remember, current level is a variable. So if you're looking for that, you'll find it in variables. And I'm going to take it out here. See this? Pop it in. Oops. Let's be careful here. I find this hard sometimes. Woohoo! Okay. And I said if my current level is equal to 1. Now, that just means that's allowing that your function to say, okay, well, if we start on level 1, we're going to look like this. And I think what a good code to bring out would be our tile map. So what I'm going to do is a little trick is if I hold down the control key and click, I can take out one block of code at a time. And that really saves me, or else you're going to have to just move around your code a little bit, but not to worry, you'll be able to put it straight back. Now, if my current level is equal to 1, I want this tile map to show, but it's not showing, right? And that's because when we talk about functions, and if you've done the Nemo game, you'll know this. When we talk about functions, there's 2 parts to a function. There's creating the function, which is what we done, and then there's calling the function. I never called the function in my onStart menu. So my onStart menu doesn't even know what to do. So I'm going to go back into functions and I'm going to call start level. And let's see what happens now. And if I refresh this, okay, it hasn't worked. So that's fine. We just need to debug our code. So what I'm thinking is, we know that sequencing is really important in coding. So I'm after, if I look at on start, I can actually see my bug. Okay, so what a good idea would be to here is for you to pause and see if you can spot it too. So I think, now I don't know if it will work, I have said call start level before I've set the current level to 1, right? So my computer doesn't even know what current level is yet. So I think if I put this second, it might work. Let's see. Woohoo! Okay, so well done if you're able to spot that, okay? So that's why your sequencing is really, really important as well. Now, what we can do now is the world is our oyster. We're going to create level 2, so I'm really, really excited about this. So what we might do is pop in here and press the plus button, okay? So if our current level is equal to 1, it's going to be this tile map, or else it's going to be this tile map. So that means if it's not equal to level 1. So let's pop into scene and let's set a tile map. And I'm going to click in here. And I have the tiles from last time. So, but I think if you want here, you could actually have your tile map going up now instead of across. So that's completely up to you. So you might have it, 50 height instead of 50 width, but I'm going to go with 50 width again. So it's long, and grab my little hand tool here so I can bring it over so everyone can see. And then I'm just going to draw my tile map. Okay, so I have these from last week. So if you want to go ahead and draw yours. Okay, so I just really quickly done mine out there, and you might realize that I actually put a wall in, okay? So not a wall that you can fall through, an actual wall that Bubbles might have to climb, and we'll do that later on. That's super exciting. That's like my favorite line of code, I think. And now I'm just going to really quickly make them sturdy walls so Bubbles can't fall through them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my red tile and I'm going to place wherever I want a heart. Remember, we made these red tiles the hearts last week. And the chicken bones were our points. So I'm going to actually put in loads of these because I want loads of points. And there we go. And our starting point was the pink tile, which was Bubbles. Okay? So I'm pretty happy with that. And then if you want, you can put in your tile that if Bubbles falls through it, they're trapped. Okay. Oops. Okay. Brilliant. So I'm going to press done. Now, we won't see that yet because we're still on level 1. But what I want to do now is I actually want to make my backgrounds a little bit more creative because I like the blue background, but what if we could have like some mountains and stuff in it? So what you could do now is go into your scene and take out set background image and put that under here. All right. So just under your background color. And I'm going to click in here. And for level 1, I'm going to have these lovely mountains. All right. And they're going to look like this. Whoop. I think they look pretty good. And gorge. And remember, our background is blue anyway, so we don't have to do anything there. But if I take my circle tool, I can draw a lovely sun. And my line tool to do the little sun rays, so we get a nice tan. And if you want, then you can insert clouds and stuff, but I'm happy enough with that. So now I think when I refresh it, that looks much better. I love that. Now, the only thing I would say is my tile is like actually morphing in with the mountains. So I might actually change the color of the mountains to a darker green. And let's see if that looks better. Yeah, I much prefer that. Okay. So pause now for a second and let's just make sure we're all caught up on all that stuff, okay? So I set my current level to 1, okay? I created a function. I put my tile maps in the function within the conditional statement. And then I just changed my background image. Okay? And now we're going to work on level 2. So remember, else is actually your level 2 because you're saying if the current level is 1, then have this, or else it's not going to be level 1. So you're going to look like this. Okay, and in level 2, I want it to be a little bit different. So I don't want, well, actually, we could have hearts, but I might just get them to be a different color. So what I can do is I can actually click this here and see the way the whole thing is highlighted in yellow. If you're on a tablet or an iPad, hold that down to duplicate it. Or if you're on a computer, right click and see this word duplicate. Just duplicate it. Now, I am going to bring this over and be careful what's where I'm putting it. I'm putting it in the else section. See here? Okay, underneath my tile map. And now this time, I don't want them to be red. I'm going to make them yellow. All right? So I'm literally just going to do that. And now my hearts are going to look a little bit different when I get to level 2. Now, one little thing that you might notice is, well, how can I even get to level 2? Okay, how do I even say change to level 2? Because if you notice, when we overlap with that, it just tells us we won. So if you think about it, that's a problem with our overlap with the tree. So let's go through our code and let's find that overlap with the tree. Okay, here we go. On Sprite, if kind player overlaps with the tree, we win. We want to change that now. So delete that. Delete game over win. And what we want to say is when we overlap with the tree, we want to change our current level by 1. So if we go into variables, we know that's where current level is because we made it in a variable. And here we have our lovely line of code that says change current level by 1. So I'm going to take this out. And I think this is super cool. So now when I overlap with the tree, I'm going to change level by 1, which means that I'm going to be on level 2, okay? Which is the else part of my statement. Okay, so I didn't actually change level. And what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to pause me and see if you can figure out my bug in this code, okay? So think, what am I missing in this block of code? And I'll tell you what it is now. I never called my function. So that line of code over there with the tree doesn't even know what all of this is because it's in a function that I never called. So I need to make sure I go into functions and I call start level. And I bring it over to change my level. Okay? Now let's try it and let's see if it works. So remember, it's so important, and I know we keep saying it, but it is so important to keep testing as you go because that's how you recognize where your bugs are. Brilliant. I'm on level 2 now. It just doesn't look any different because I haven't made it any different, okay? So why it's important to keep testing as you're going is if I had to keep going and going and going and going with that code, I probably wouldn't have known where it was. But because that was the newest thing that I had just done and my game worked fine before I put in that code, I knew it had to be something to do with this. Okay, so that's why it's important. Now let's go back over and work on our level 2. So I am going to change the background image. Okay, so I'm going to go into scene. And when I get to level 2, I want my background image to look a little bit different. So this time, I think we can have the same mountains and all, actually. So what I could have done there is I actually could have just copied, duplicated. That's a tall mountain. I wouldn't want to be climbing that. And then what I might do instead is actually here I might have a moon instead of a sun. Like this could be like level 2 can be nighttime. And press done. And I'm going to need a darker color for the background. I can actually do that on here, to be honest. I don't have to set a separate background color. So I can just make it like that. And we can have little stars, actually. I'm getting carried away now. But this is my favorite part of arcade, is making your game come to life and being really creative. That's what I love the most about it. So I like spending time on stuff like this. Okay, done. So let's check And let's see if we can see our nighttime tile map now. So I'm going to go and I'm going to really quickly move through this, dodging the flies. Woohoo! Okay, so I'm on level 2 now. One thing you'll notice that Bubbles is at the very end of the tile map, okay? And we haven't changed our chicken bones to be at. But our love hearts are yellow, like we said. So we're doing amazing. Now, 2 things that I want to do here is I want to make something for the orange tile map. So I might change it from a chicken bone to a strawberry or something. And then I want to make sure Bubbles is back at the start, okay? Now, if we go into our tile map for level 2, so in else, we actually place Bubbles here with the pink. So I just need to now place Bubbles on top of that tile. So we're going to be using these 4 element values again. I know, I told you we we're going to be doing it loads of times. And I am going to make sure it's under the green, all right? And remember to pause me at any stage because we are flying this. So it's 4 element value of our array of the pink tile. So here it is. And remember, an array is just a collection of something, okay? In this case, it's a collection of the pink tile. And we want to go back into scene and we want to place our sprite. So this one here, place your sprite on top of the tile map. And not chicken bone. Chicken bone loves showing up. It's place Bubbles on top of the value. And you might be wondering again, why am I taking out value? Well, our pink tile is the value. So that's why I keep taking that down. So place bubble on top of our value, which is the pink tile. And then we want to make that see-through because we don't want it to actually look like it's there. So I am going to go back into scene and I'm going to set transparency at the pink tile. Okay. Now, that has bubbles sorted then on level 2. So we have bubbles sorted, we have our heart sorted, and now we just want to have our chicken bone sorted. So I'm going to come back over here to where my chicken bone was. And I am going to, again, highlight this block here. Okay, so if you're on a tablet or an iPad, you just hold down on that with your finger and then press duplicate. Or if you're on a computer and you have a mouse pad, you can right click and duplicate it. And I'm going to pop it over to my level 2, okay? So make sure you're in your else section, which I know I am. So I'm going to put it here underneath the green. And now I want to say, I am going to make this look like I don't know. Maybe we'll go for a strawberry, something healthy, because we went for a chicken bone last week, right? So we'll say a strawberry. But one thing that's kind of just annoying me a little bit is that chicken bone doesn't really transfer, to be honest, over all of the sprites because, like, yeah, it works with chicken bone, but it doesn't work with strawberry. So what I'd ask you to do, if you're having the same problem at home and you're like, actually, that variable name doesn't really make sense anymore, let's just rename it, right? So we don't want a new variable. We actually just want to rename wherever chicken bone is. And you can't call it food because food is a kind of sprite. So that's a keyword. So that's already taken. So I'm going to go with yummy. All right. And then that's going to change everywhere. So if I go over to where chicken bone was, it's changed to yummy. And it just means that it's more flexible. So you can use that variable name anywhere then. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to really quickly play my game. And I'm going to see finally if my level 2 is how I want it looking. All right, so let's overlap. Woohoo! Okay, so now we're at the start where the pink placeholder was. And I have my strawberry, which the flies are still coming at me because it's the same variable. And my hearts, lovely. Okay, I'm really, really happy with that. But now we have one problem. Remember I said I put a wall here? That's because I'm going to make Bubbles start climbing walls, okay? Now, this code is pretty full on, okay? So what I'd ask you to do is to make sure that you are going to be pausing me as much as you can, okay? So let's do it. the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to have like an on-game update block, because we want the game to check every single frame. Is Bubbles needing to climb a wall? So let's go into game, and let's take out on-game update. And we are going to be using if statements and booleans here, okay? So yous are so far advanced now. And remember, a boolean is, we've actually seen them quite a few times. Anywhere that you've seen true is a boolean, okay? And we're just going to use them in a different instance now. So I am going to bring out an if statement. So let's everyone go into logic, and let's bring this block of code out. And I have to say, this is probably the coolest line of code or chunk of code that I've done anyway. I think it's super cool. Along with flipping bubbles, I think this is cool. Now, we are going to need an and less than or greater than, okay? So I know that sounds mad. But first thing we want to do is go into logic, scroll down. Don't think we've used this before. But see the way we get two options now. Okay, this is really comes in handy. So let's take this out and pop it in here. And we want to say that if Bubbles is hitting a wall, okay, to the right, and Bubbles is not in the air, well, then we want her to jump, okay? So this can be a little bit long-winded, but don't worry, we'll get there. So I am going to take out this from scene. There actually is a block of code that fits in here. And see this one here? Is my sprite hitting a wall? Let's bring this out and let's pop it in. So is not yummy. Is Bubbles hitting a wall to the right-hand side? So change this to right. And is Bubbles not moving on the y-axis? So is Bubbles not jumping? So what we need to do here is we need to bring out actually a less than or greater than block. Okay, so I know I can bring out any one of these and I can just change it. So I'm going to bring this one out and watch carefully where I'm putting it and popping it into the second option after and, okay? And I don't want the comparator to be equal to, I want it to be greater than or equal to, okay? So then I'm going to say if Bubbles' velocity on y is greater than or equal to 0, well, then we want something to happen. So let's go into sprites and let's take out my favorite one anyway, because I can do so much with this, my sprite X, and pop it in your first 0. And again, it's not yummy. It's Bubbles and it's VY, okay? And is it greater than or equal to 0? Well, if it is, then we are going to set Bubbles' acceleration on Y to 0. So we don't want Bubbles to be able to move, okay? So we're going to say set Bubbles AY to 0. And then we can actually hold down, remember if you're on a tablet, hold down and duplicate this, or right click and duplicate it. And this time you want to set Bubbles VY. So movement on Y, VY to 0 as well. Okay? And now what we want to do is actually set Bubbles image. And this part is really cool. So this is what we're going to make Bubbles look like while she's climbing. Okay? This is my favorite part. So go back into sprites. And we are going to take out set my sprite image to. And we want to change it to Bubbles. And the image that we've been using is in gallery, and it's this one here. Oh, I went past it. There we go. And I want to actually give Bubbles some arms, so it looks like she's gripping onto something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a little bit wider. So maybe like 19. That might be too much. And just draw some arms. So like, whoa. Now, I like to give Bubbles little mittens or rock climbing gloves, actually. I used to do a bit of rock climbing, so I know they're important. And press done. Okay, let's have a look at what that looks like. It might not even work yet. We might need some more lines of code, but let's just see. Now, I actually think that my wall is on level 2, so I don't want to have to keep going to the end to go to level 2. So I would say a good thing to do now would be to actually just go into your level 1 tile map. So see if current level equals to 1, that tile map, and just put in a real quick wall somewhere, just so you can practice, all right? And make sure you make those walls actual walls. And press done. This just means that I can just keep practicing and it's like easy access. Okay, well, okay, I seen Bubbles rock climbing gloves there for a second, but now look, she's stuck in the air, okay? So what we might have to do there is actually set Bubbles acceleration, okay? So I just actually have to find this block of code now. We have so much, oh, it's down the bottom. Okay, so what I think would be a good idea to do now is press this plus button, and then we're going to say else set Bubbles AY. So here we go. Set Bubbles AY. So Bubbles acceleration to, and like, I don't know, I might just go for a lot here. I might just go for like 350, but you test it out and see what works for you. And hopefully now she won't fly in the air. So there's a rock climbing gloves. Perfect. See the way she's climbing? Isn't that so cool? Okay, I'm really happy with that. One thing though is that she doesn't climb walls if they're to the left of her. Okay, so she's only able to climb walls if they're to the right, because, well, look at her code. That's what it says. Okay, so it's really, really cool. I love this. Okay, so let's do a code that says that, well, if the wall is to the left, let's make Bubbles be able to climb too. So what we can do is we could actually copy and paste this whole thing, to be honest. But again, I think it's good practice to just, let's do it from the start, okay? So there might be a few things that we have to change, and this is quite complicated, so I think it's good to actually go from the start. Okay, let's bring out an if statement, and let's put it underneath that plus, see there? And we're going to need another and, okay? So all the way down the bottom. And we're going to pop that in there. And we need our hitting wall, which we know is insane. So scroll down. Yeah. Is my sprite hitting a wall to the left? And is Bubbles' velocity on Y greater than 0? So we need another logic. And I know I can just take this out and change it. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to make this greater than or equal to. Go back into sprites and take out my sprite X, because I know that I can just change these and manipulate these to whatever I want. All right, and that looks good to me. Now I'm actually just going to duplicate these. Okay, so set Bubbles AY to 0, set Bubbles VY to 0, and set Bubbles image to the climbing the wall image. Okay, now the only thing that we have to do is flip Bubbles horizontally. Okay, and we've done this in the last episode, I think. So we're going to search flip picture, and remember, this is where I kept getting mixed up. I was like, why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? But it's not picture, it's actually Bubbles image. So let's scroll down. See here, my sprite image. That's just going to go in here. And it's not Yummy. It loves Yummy these days. It was chicken. Oh, yeah, that is chicken bone. Remember, I kept doing that to us last episode. Flip Bubbles image horizontally. Right, now that is a lot of code. So what I'm going to do is I am going to leave it here so you can actually just pause it. So pause me now, and there's your code, okay? If you want to be working on that. And let's see if it works. I actually, you know what, I might need a few more walls in my tile map, because remember I said I made a mess of that one because I'm not able to actually jump back up. So, well, I might now that I can climb walls. Okay, let's try this and make it a wall. So what I love about doing with Arcade is that, like, you're constantly making changes to your game and making it better, which is what I love to do. So that's working. And am I able to climb? And can I go back now? Oh, I think actually my wall is just too big. Let me try the other one. Okay. It's not. Okay, it's not. So not to worry. Let's have a look at our code, right? And remember I told you to pause it. So you've probably noticed this actually. But if you want now to pause me and see if you can spot the error before I do, that would be fun. I'm going to go through and I'm going to just make sure all my variable names are the same because I know it love changing it to yummy. Look. Yummy. No, it's supposed to be bubbles. Okay, maybe this will work now. Let's see. Let's see. Hopefully. Oops. Okay. Yes. Okay, we have it working. Woo. Okay. Amazing. I'm delighted. Now, last thing that we're going to do is we are going to actually win the game. Okay. So let's make sure we can get past level. Oh, they're taking all my scores. Next level. Now, interesting to see what we actually, oh, we have a wall. Lovely. I'm not even trying to avoid the flies. I should be trying to jump over them so they're not taking points off me. Okay, when I get to level 2, I have nothing on my tile map to say I'm done. Okay, so what we can do there is go back up to your tile map and we can create a placeholder. I'm going to actually create a placeholder for Rocky because that's my dog. And the whole point of this game is I'm going to try save Rocky, okay? So I'm just going to take this brown tile and make a placeholder for it. So clicking on the brown tile, making sure that it's at the end. Perfect. Now, like always, right, we want to now use one of these for Rocky, okay? So let's go back into loops and let's say for element, make sure it's underneath the green, okay? Make sure it's like that. For element value of, and it's an array of all the brown tiles, okay? So we want to go down, array, pop it in. You are probably sick of doing these now. You're probably like, yeah, Corey, I know. I can do these in my sleep. And make sure it's the brown tile. And wherever there's a brown tile, we want to create a new sprite, okay? So set, not yummy again. We want now, remember, this is where you might get caught. If I rename that variable, yummy is going to change everywhere. So make sure it's a new variable. And I'm going to call this, Rocky. And I'm going to make Rocky look like a little dog. Now, if I had great art skills, I could try draw a Yorkshire Terrier. Oh, I'm not going to. But if you do at home, make sure you tag us on, you get your parents to tag us on Twitter because we're dying to see these games. And I'm not going to make Rocky the player. I'm going to actually create a new kind for Rocky and I'm going to call it like win or something. Win, okay? Because that's how I'm going to win. And then I want to make sure I place Rocky on top of that tile. So place my sprite on top of tile map. And it's going to be place Rocky on top of the brown tile, which is the value. And then we are going to set the transparency. So we're going to make sure that that tile is see-through. Okay, brilliant. Now we have that done. But one thing I think might look a little bit cool is I know people love projectiles, okay? So I think we should actually create a projectile now. So what I actually am going to do is I want to try figure out a way of not having to keep going to the end of the game to get to the next level. So I think the only way that I can do that is I think I have to make this equal level 2. Okay, so I'm just doing this for pure time, but you don't have to do this. But if you want to, I just press the plus button there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and duplicate this. And I'm going to make this level 2. Okay, and I'm going to take everything. So click on set tile map and drag everything up to there. Now, again, this isn't necessary, okay? This is just going to save me time. Okay, so I am going to now have a look at my level 2 projectile, level 2 tile map, sorry. So go to else and go to set tile map 2. Now, I want the projectile to come like shooting up, okay? So we have like lava here. So what we could do is we might have some like fireballs coming up from the lava. So you're going to need to create a tile, another new tile, I know. whatever color you want. I might just go for this purple. And these are going to, wherever you put these is where your projectile is going to be. But remember, because it's shooting up out of the ground, it needs to come in between these, okay? So you might put one here, and you might put one here because it can come up through here, and so on, okay? This is going to make the game actually really hard. But I have confidence in us, okay? And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a fireball. Okay, and a fireball, again, is another new sprite. And make sure, because it's on level 2, so make sure that you're in your else part of your block. And let's go back into loops. I told you we were going to do these like 10 times. Make sure it's underneath the green. And it's going to be array of all purple locations. So go into scene, an array of all purple locations. And I want to create a sprite now. So let's go into sprites and let's set my sprite. Now, again, we have to be careful here. It's not yummy. It's going to be a new variable. And we can call it fireball. And we can actually click into sprites now and actually create a fireball. Now, I'm going to do my absolute best, but I don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm going rogue here. And let's see. Okay. I'm actually surprisingly happy with that. And I'm going to press done. Now, one thing is you can actually just change the kind here, change it to kind projectile because that's what it is, right? And like always, we want to place the fireball on top of the value. So go back into scene and take out these blocks of code that you're super used to by now. Make sure you're putting them in the right place. Fireball needs to go on top of the purple tile, which is the value. And we want to set transparency at the value. All right. Now, one thing I would like to do is there is a way that we can like animate the fireball so it looks cool. So it doesn't just look like a rock coming up. So we're going to actually animate this. Okay. And we know from last week that to get the animation pane, we actually click extensions and click animations. And once you do that, then you have the animations category all the time. But we're not going to use the one that we used last week. It's going to be this one here. So let's bring this out and watch carefully where I'm putting it. See the way I'm putting it underneath set transparency. And I want to animate the fireball. And I don't want it to fly to the center. Remember, I want it to go up, okay? So I'm going to actually say ease up. But remember, this is your game, okay? So you might have yours falling down or parachuting, whatever you want. Make sure that you take some time to actually try out all these because they're really, really cool. And I'm going to keep it at 2 seconds and I'm going to loop it, okay? So it's on. Now, one more thing that we can do is we can actually have an effect on the fireball. Okay, so we can actually make it look like the fireball is on fire, which is so cool. So we can go into sprites and see this here in effects. My sprite starts spray effect. If I put this underneath where it says loop, I can click on fireball and I can say start fire effect. Okay, now I'm going to leave this here and you can pause it, okay? So everything from Rocky and the fireball is here. So make sure you pause it here if you want to go off and do it. I'm going to actually test out my game because we made loads of changes there, okay? So realistically, I should have been checking this after every one, okay? So let me see if I've made any errors. We're on level 2. Look at the fireballs. They're so cool. Okay, I'm really happy with that. Now, remember, this part here can't hurt you because that's actually just an effect. But the actual fireball itself, the whole point of that is that it's actually going to take away lives on you, okay? So not even points. It's going to take away lives. So let's do an overlap for that, okay? And we know that it's a projectile, so it's going to be a type of sprite overlap. So let's go into sprites and let's take out on sprite of kind player overlaps with sprite of kind projectile because that's what the fireball is. And then what we want to happen is we want to change our life by -1. We want to take away life, okay? So then when I test this out, if I go to the very end again, I'm going to actually this time try and see if I can overlap with Rocky. Now, I don't think we've written the lines of code yet to say what happens when we do, but well, at least you know it works. Okay, I got stuck there and the fireball took all my life, so I didn't even get to overlap with Rocky. Okay, so one more change that we're going to make to this game before we wrap up is that we're going to say when our sprite overlaps with Rocky, we are going to win the game. Now, if I remember correctly, it is going to be a sprite kind of overlap because remember, we actually made Rocky a kind of sprite, which was Win. So it's going to be when the player overlaps with Win, okay, because Win is Rocky. Rocky's getting a great shout out on this game. He's going to love it. So when Bubbles overlaps with Win, we're going to win the game, okay? Game of Win. And one more time, I'm going to try this game. I really hope I make it to the end, because if I don't make it to the end, I'm going to make some changes because I need to rescue him. Okay, now those flies are getting me like there's no tomorrow, so I need to be trying to get points because that's the whole point of the game, is like get a high score. I'm doing better than 4 anyway, so that's... Ooh, okay, I need to be careful here. I'm getting nervous. Ooh, okay. Oh, these flies. Okay. All right. Oh, no. Okay. Right. Can you tell I'm nervous? Okay. Oh, one more. Okay. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Woohoo! Okay. I won and I got 7. So I'm delighted with myself. Okay. So there's loads of things that you can do in that game to actually make it even better. So like when you overlap with a heart, maybe a music sound plays. So maybe a play sounds ba-ding. When a fly captures you, maybe like another sound plays, like power down. So there is so much that you can do to that game to make it even more interesting. But I don't know, can you beat a high score of 7? I'm sure you definitely can. Now, because you know how to do levels now, you can go on and you can create as many levels as you want, okay? Now, one thing that you might notice is what we could do here is we could actually make level 2 a function, which I think I'll do that now and see what happens. Because see, all of this code, that's all for level 2. So let's just put it in a function. So let's go functions, make a function, and we're going to call this level 2 and press done. This is just good code and practice, okay? So if I bring this over here, I can put all of this code in here. And now what do I have to do? I need to call the function where it says else, okay? So call the function. Okay? And now, just real quickly, I'm going to see if this works because I think that this would be so helpful in your game, okay? Because it just means that your code is condensed and then you can just keep going on. It's real neat. Brilliant. Okay. Now, if I wanted to create level 3, what I would do is I would press this, okay? I'd bring level 2 up here and I'd bring this down. I'd duplicate this and put this in here, okay? And I'd say if my current level is equal to 1, do this. Or else it's going to be equal to level 2, so then call level 2. Or else it's going to be level 3, which you can do here. And then you can just call level 3. And you can keep doing that and keep doing that for as long as you want, okay? So, well done, everyone. That's absolutely amazing on what you've done with that game, okay? So, just want to say a big thank you for all your hard work over the past couple of weeks. And now you have all the knowledge and skills available to you to create any game you want. Okay, and that's what we want you to do for your second project. We want you to come up with a creative and amazing game that you love, and then you can send it into us and we can see it and we can play it and see if we can get the high score. Okay, so how you can do that is, I'm sure you know by now, but you actually need to save the game. Okay, so you need to actually press save down here and you need to share that file with us. Okay, a lot of people take the link and that doesn't work because that actually just gives you a blank editor, okay? Now, if you want, then your parent or guardian can tag us with your game on Twitter. with hashtag MS DreamSpace or at MS Edu Ireland. Okay, so all that is available on the Sway anyway. So well done again on all your hard work, and we can't wait to see your games. Bye.